Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for continuing to support my channel.
Hey everybody, this is Matt from Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, and today I am going to be going over my top 10 most anticipated fantasy reads of 2023. And luckily, none of them have come up in the early part of the year because I am having this video come out a little later than I wanted to. But let's start at my number 10 most anticipated book, and that is going to be The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. This comes out on October 1st. And this is one of the Secret Project books. And, you know, in general, I'm trying in this series, and you'll notice that I don't know a lot about these books. That's partly because I try to hide myself from information about books that I want to read. I like to be surprised. I'm not one of those people that likes to get really hyped up and find out a bunch of details, read the, release chapters. I'm not that kind of guy. I get excited about something and then I go, okay, don't show me anything more. But I do know a little bit about this. And what I know is that this follows 𝐒𝐨𝐜𝐢𝐚𝐥. And if you have read Stormlight Archive, you absolutely know who this character is. I was a big fan of this character from the moment that he came out on the page in the first book of Stormlight. And he's just such an awesome character. And I've been so happy that he's gotten a bigger and bigger role as that series has went along. And I was very excited to find out that he is the star of his own book. This book takes place, I suspect, way in the future because it's, out in the stars. It's like this world hopper of a person. And I believe he's like running from some, bad force. And I'm excited about it. I think I'm more excited about this book than I was at the beginning of the year because I kind of went into this weird cycle where when the secret books were announced, the 4 secret books, and if you don't know what they are, then you're probably not watching this video because I suspect the amount of people that are watching a little channel like mine, about 100% of you know that Brandon Sanderson had by far the world's biggest Kickstarter to launch 4 books that he didn't tell anybody about. And he had secretly written them like a maniac, and this is one of them. But I was very excited. I was wrapped up in the hype, and I was ready to go. And then as time went on, my hype started to wane. I found out a bunch of information that I was not liking, one of which is that Sanderson is going to be sending out some of his books for somebody else on his team to write, and he's gonna, help out with them. I hate that idea. I wish he would just take ownership over his stuff. And that he would just focus all on his own. And even though I know this book is written by him, it just kind of made me kind of frustrated with Sanderson. Then I found out that he wants to incorporate way more 𝐒𝐈₺ references than all his books. And I like the 𝐒𝐈₺, don't get me wrong, but I sometimes feel like the books become more of a 𝐒𝐈₺ thing than really just telling the story of that individual book. And I'm here for the stories. 𝐒𝐈₺ is cool. I like it to be kind of subtle Easter egg things. And that really came out when I read The Lost Metal, the last book in Era 2 of Mistborn, a book that I very much disliked. I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars, in part because it felt like that there was this crazy, onrush of, is that a word? Onrush? You know what I mean. And we just got flooded with these 𝐒𝐈₺ references kind of out of the blue. And, I wish there was like kind of this slower build to 𝐒𝐈₺, and it felt like it just kind of hit me like an avalanche. And so I was like, man, I'm not going to like these Secret Project books, am I? They're all a little bit smaller, I believe. And in general, the longer the book from Sanderson, the more that I've enjoyed it. I love Stormlight. I really like Mistborn. But some of his shorter works, they didn't work for me. And I read Tress of the Emerald Sea, expecting that I would think it was so-so, and it was magnificent. It's still my favorite read of 2023. I know I've only read like a small handful of books, but it was an amazing read, and I loved every part of it. So now, I'm back in. I can't wait to read this book. It's got a character that I love, and yeah. October 1st cannot come soon enough. Number 9 is going to be a book that none of you know about because I feel like I'm the only person on booktube. I don't feel like. I know I'm the only booktuber that talks about this series, and this is 𝐒𝐤 This is the 3rd book in that series. I forget the name of it, and it is by Travis Riddle. This comes out on March 14th. And this is a series that I got turned on to by a little thread on the fantasy subreddit. On Reddit, and I heard about somebody praising this book, the first 𝐒𝐤 book, and it was because it was like a Pokemon inspired book. Now, more than a little inspired. It's basically Pokemon with a different brand on it. And I thought it was very fun. It's not like the deepest fantasy book that I've ever read by any stretch of the imagination, but it is one of the more fun fantasy books I've ever read. And, you know, I think they're just such amazing books to read in between these huge, like, chonker fantasy books that are dark and heavy. Then you get this, like, fun, kind of whimsical, you know, Pokemon book, and it's great. You know, I used to like Pokemon when I was a little kid. I got the first Pokemon game when it, you know, I got it before anybody got it because my friends got a ROM for it when I was in middle school. The Japanese version, we had to get it translated, and I was just all in for Pokemon. I didn't really play a lot of games since then, since I was a little kid, until recently when I got one for my kids. One of the new, like the newest one or something like that. And it's just such a fun concept. I'm surprised that nobody has written a book like this before. It's not just strictly Pokemon though. There's like a different concept to it. This whole idea of how you catch them, how you train them, what they are themselves is very unique, and I think better than just, you know, a Pokemon story. It works really well, and I can't wait for this third book to come out. Number 8 is Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee. This comes out on April 11th. And, you know, I feel like I would naturally think this book would be higher on my list because I love Fonda Lee. I just love this woman. She writes incredibly. I've only read 3 of her books. I don't know if she has more than that, but I've read the Greenbone Saga. And I gave all of those books 5 out of 5s. I thought it was just a perfect trilogy. And I just can't say enough positive things, not only about the subject matter of those books, which I love, this, you know, mafia-style crime book, and with the twist that she put on it, this kind of like an, you know, Asian-inspired world. Maybe Asian's too broad. I'm sure it's something more specific, but maybe I was like really racist in what I said. I'm not trying to be. I love it, and it's just amazing writing. And so anything she puts out, I'm going to be really excited about. Now, this book is very short. I already got a copy of it actually. I got Tor said, do you want to review this one book that I was not interested in reviewing? And I kind of cheekily said no, but I would like to review this Fonda Lee book. And they sent it to me like way early. This book doesn't come out until April. I've had it for a few months already, but I'm not reading it yet. I don't want to read it until the hype generates, until this is about to come out. I'll read it a few days before April 11th. It's real short, and I'll try to get my review out on April 11th, or maybe I'll see when other people are releasing reviews and I'll come out. But the fact that it's so short and the subject matter, you know, what I think this is about based on the cover of this book, and a non-spoiler review that I heard a little bit of from another booktuber that I like, the Obsessive Bookseller. And I'll put a link down below so you can check out her stuff. She's awesome. And it's like it's like a, you know, growing of age story between this human and their like giant pet flying beast thing. There doesn't seem to be like an antagonist. It looks like a very uncommon fantasy story. So what I'm guessing is I'm going to love the writing. I'm going to love a lot of the directions that they take, but I'm going to wish there was more. I'm going to wish it was deeper and darker, kind of like the Greenbone Saga. But I am still very excited about it. Really, Fonda Lee could come out with anything, and I'm going to be pretty excited. Number 7, and we're going to go back to Brandon Sanderson. This is going to be The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England. This comes out on April 1st. This is going to be the second. I think it's going to be the second secret project. And yeah, this is, I don't know much about this other than some things worry me, although it just sounds fun. You know, I worry that Brandon Sanderson sometimes tries to be too funny and it comes off not funny. And, you know, a lot of his humor doesn't work for me. Now, I know that this book, based on what little I know, is going to be trying very hard to be a comedy book. And this will be the first Sanderson book that's really tried to be simply just a comedy. So maybe when he's just focused on that and doesn't have to write these kind of side characters, write these like the Wayne character where he's the funny guy in this kind of more serious world, maybe it really works. I am excited about the general concept of it, though. I mean, just the name of this is funny. The very little that I found out about this seems entertaining to me, and I'm always kind of hungry for that next. Nobody's going to be like this, but like the next person that's going to really evoke Pratchett vibes. I love Terry Pratchett. I am so sad that he passed away, and I'm so sad that nobody has been able to pick up that gauntlet that he threw down when it came to comedy and a fantasy book. So here is hoping that Sanderson is going to be able to do an amazing effort at doing this, and hopefully it works, and then hopefully he does more. I think out of all of this list, this one has the biggest potential to fall flat for me. It also has one of the biggest potentials to be, absolutely incredible. So, number 6 is Gods of the Weirdwood. I don't know how to say Weirdwood. It's W-Y-R-D wood. So, Wordwood, or who knows. But this is by R.J. Barker. This comes out on June 27th. And I have very intentionally not found out one single piece of information about this because I just adore R.J. Barker. I've only read 3 of his books. I know that he has, I think it's Age of Assassins that he wrote, but I fell in love with him because I read The Tide Child. And The Tide Child is just really the perfect fantasy series for me. It's another perfectly 5 out of 5 for each of the 3 books in that trilogy. If you know anything about me, I like boats. I like boats in my fantasy books. I can't explain it. I don't know why. I didn't grow up in a family that was like a boating family. And man, I tell you, boats in a fantasy book is a magic formula for me. Now, I don't know if there's any in this book, but I do know that The Tide Child just rocked. I love pirate stories. I love kind of a darker story. I love great writing, and R.J. Barker just delivered in spades. More than anything, I do think that he writes incredible prose that's not trying too hard. It just comes off so naturally and amazing, and I suspect that I'll love everything that R.J. Barker puts out. And later on this year, I do plan on reading Age of Assassins. You would think, based on all this praise that I've said, that I would have read it by now. But I just finished, I think like a month ago, I finished The Tide Child, and I really space out my books. I read a ton of series at a time, and I just can't get to everything that I want to read. Number 5 is Empire of the Vampire #2 by Jay Kristoff, and this one does not have a release date. I have read that he is planning on releasing this in 2023, and I don't even know the name of this book. I just know that it's the second Empire of the Vampire book. And oh man, this is good. I did a viewer pick where I did a poll on YouTube. Not a poll, actually. I did everyone put their name in a hat, and I drew a random book, and I decided to read it. And I was so disappointed when this book got drawn because I don't like vampires. I've never liked vampires. I think they're like the most unimaginative fantasy character, and I think they're just so boring to me. And I read this book, and very instantly I fell in love with it. And that love continued throughout the entire book. It's just so well done. I can't explain it, and I think part of it is I did the audiobook, and the audiobook is absolutely wonderful. I love the accents that this voice actor put into this book. It's just amazing. I definitely think you need to pick this book up in audio form. I'm always kind of hungry for what books are going to be good on audio because so many fantasy books, you got to read them physical. They're so complicated. You need to look at the maps. You need to reference a bunch of characters. For me, when I read a book, sometimes it helps me to take, some basic notes on what's going on. I'm that kind of reader, but this book is simple. It has very good prose. It's not like I don't mean simple like in a dumb way. I just mean simple in that there's not a ton of named characters. You can follow along with the storytelling aspect, and it just works. Now, I will just take a little moment to self-promo here, in that if you would like a free credit for Audible, and you want to hook me up whenever you sign up for a free trial of Audible using my promo code of audibletrial.com/Matt, then I get a kickback. So I would appreciate that. Also, if you're a Prime member, you get 2 free books. So you don't even have to buy anything. If you just sign up, I instantly get paid. That's awesome. So do that if you don't have an Audible account and pick up Empire of the Vampire. This book just works on so many levels. I love the framing narrative where you have this person in present day in an intense situation that I want to find out more about, telling his life story. Now, this is something that's been tried and true in the fantasy genre, made very popular, probably way before this, but really popular in modern day by Name of the Wind, by Patrick Rothfuss, who does that excellently. And it's just such a great story going through this vampire killer who is also a vampire himself, a half vampire, and how he became the world's greatest vampire hunter. It's great. It's just peak fantasy that just happens to have vampires in it. Number 4 is The Burning, The Lord of Demons by Evan Winter, and this is supposed to come out in 2023. Again, no date here. You're going to see this as a common theme going forward. I don't know why my favorite books on this list all do not have dates set to them, but I have heard from, I think, his Twitter account that he is planning on coming out with this in 2023. And I love this series. It's so good. I love The Burning. It's not the most complicated series in the world. It's more fun. It's easy to follow along with. It's kind of this, this classic story of kind of a magic school, magic training to be better at battle with this bit more epic scope of geopolitical stuff going on. That's awesome. I love the uniqueness of having this African-inspired world here. I don't know, something about the fact that all of the fantasy books that I read typically all feel like they come from the same place. They feel like they're ripped out of like some like fantasy version of England or America or something. But to get these books that show like a different culture is unique. I like different stuff. I read hundreds of fantasy books. So anytime an author can bust out something that is out of the norm, as long as they do it well, I'm going to like it more than if you did the normal choice. That's part of the reason I think that I love Greenbone Saga so much is, having this kind of Asian feel to it, which I will say is less unique than the African feel, because there are, I could think off the top of my head, a dozen different books that have that Asian feel to them. But this is the only one that I've ever read with kind of like the African stuff going on. And it's just great. I love the story. I'm a sucker for these magic school things. I'm a sucker for these like magical tournament type settings. And it's awesome. Everything about it works for me. I wish it was a little darker, but not every book can be grimdark. I don't need them all to be. And this is a good example of that. And I know this book's going to be crazy popular when it comes out, and I want to be, in front of the hype train when it does. Number 3 is The Sharded Few, number 2. This is by Alec Hudson. This will be coming out in 2023. I have heard no information about this, so I actually sent a Facebook message to Alec Hudson, who told me, yes, it will be coming out in 2023, and I am super excited. This is another one that is not very popular. Kind of like the 𝐁𝐤𝐢 series. This one's a little bit more popular. I've heard some booktubers talking about it. In fact, I think Patrick Leo released a video recently where he said he's going to read this book this year. And I know that if people give this a chance, they're going to fall in love with it. It blends a couple concepts that I love. I love epic fantasy. I don't like every epic fantasy, but in general, I love epic fantasy. And this is very much an epic fantasy. I love progression fantasy. This is the first time, I think, that I have seen a very good blending of this huge scale book with a progression aspect. Now, progression, think of it as, constantly leveling up, essentially. Not necessarily just getting like levels, but always the characters are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. They're learning more powers. And it's just this addicting concept to me where I can't wait to see what they learn next. And this is great. I don't want to be like this guy that's full of like hyperbole, but I will say that I'd have to really think about it to definitively say this, but off the top of my head, I can't think of a magic system that I've liked more than what came out of The Sharded Few. It's such an inventive magic system, in part because of its simplicity, and in part because it's so unique. Now, those two concepts should not go together, but somehow they do. You've got these different like schools of magic that people learn, and these different houses. I'm not using the terms right. It's been a while since I read it, but think of like different factions, and they each have like a thing that they're known for, like fire or darkness or water. And this seems like basic elemental magic. But then you learn about the powers that they can do, and every time you learn one, it's like, how has this not been done yet? And how, Alec Hudson, are you the first person that's thought of something so inventive, yet so simple at the same time? And I love it for that. And not only that, but it has a great story and got some fun characters, and I can't wait to see where the story goes. So hopefully this book comes out sooner rather than later, and I cannot wait to review it. Number 2 is From the Path to Ascendancy from the Malazan series. This is Forge of the High Mage by Ian C. Esselmont. This is supposedly going to come out on May 30th. This date keeps getting pushed back. But I feel relatively confident that this book is going to be coming out in 2023. And I'm a sucker for 𝐒𝐿𝐴ZN. You have heard me talk, if you watch my videos, about my love for 𝐒𝐿AZN. It's my favorite series of all time. My favorite book of all time is in 𝐒𝐿AZN. And 𝐒𝐵𝐿 Erickson is my favorite author. Now, this is not 𝐒𝐵𝐿 Erickson. This is 𝐒𝐴ZN, but I also love 𝐒𝐴ZN. 𝐒𝐿AZN has two different writers. They covered very different subjects within this world. Now, this series itself is about like a type of prequel story. I'd say it's a prequel story to the founding of the 𝐒𝐿AZN Empire. And the two main figures that started this, Kellan, Ved, and Dancer, two figures that I was desperate to hear more about when I was reading Book of the Fallen. And when I found out that there's a whole series dedicated to the way that these two grew up and learned and got the powers that they got, and I don't want to spoil anything, but their major secret power that allowed them to dominate, I can't wait to find out how that went down. And I'm finding out in the series. But in part, what I love about this series more, because I find that a lot of times prequel series can be a lot of fan service. They didn't need to be written. I'm a big advocate for series need to figure out when they need to end. And oftentimes they go and do these prequel stories, and it's like, why don't you just go write something else? And I started to feel that when I was reading this first book, and then it all hit me that I needed to know more about this, because all of a sudden all these characters are coming back that I get to find their backstories about, and they're all very compelling. I also love that I get to find out more about these characters from a lens of a different author. Now, they're all written a little bit differently. They feel very similar, but it's fun seeing this different way that an author went about writing these characters, the way that they dialogue, and it's just wonderful. They all have this epic feel to them that 𝐒𝐿AZN's known for, and they're just building and building up to what I know is going to end up happening. I just can't wait to see it go down. And number one is going to be from the Cradle series, Waybound. This is by Will White. It will be coming out in 2023. It was originally supposed to come out late 2022, but it got kicked back, and I'm kind of glad that it did. I'm glad that it did because I've given almost every book in this series a 5 out of 5. Now, I have given some 4s. I don't think I've given anything less than that until the second to last book came out, the book that came out earlier in 2022. I think it came around like July, and I was disappointed. I gave it a 3 out of 5, which isn't horrible, but I would expect, when I think of my all-time favorite series, they all kind of build up to a great thing. And to see the series kind of what feels like it plateaued and then start to go down, that worries me, because I tell you, if I had a book series that had a bunch of 3s out of 5s and then closed out to a 5 out of 5, I would like that a lot more than if a series had some 5 out of 5s and then ended on a low note. I need a powerful ending. I love it. I need it. And I'm worried, greatly worried, that Will White doesn't know where he's going with this, and that it's all getting either too rushed or it's kind of building to that point where I'm not interested anymore. This is a progression fantasy like I was just talking about a couple books ago with The Sharded Few. And a problem with progression fantasy is the same problem that a lot of video games have, where at a certain point you level up your character so much that it becomes not interesting and not difficult anymore. And I worry that Cradle's at that point where the characters are so powerful that the tension's gone. My favorite part of video games is that cultivating power part, more towards the beginning and the middle of games, where there's people more powerful than me that I need to rise up against the odds to take down. And that's what Cradle was all about. Now, it's all kind of shifting now, and the characters are just like these gods, essentially. And I want this last book to be so good. If the last book is incredible, this is going to go down as a top 5 fantasy series for me. If it flubs the ending, it's not going to make it within the top 10. There's a lot on the line. And I know that Will White, all he cares about is, what does Matt think? I know that he's writing it just for me. But I'm sure a lot of people agree with my perspective here. I know that he has no idea who I am, nor will he ever, nor do I ever expect him to, because I am a nobody in the grand scheme of things when it comes to fantasy books. But I dearly hope that this works and that I can be here being the #1 cheerleader for this series like I have been up until the second to last book. So those are my 10. I cannot wait to hear what you think about these 10. And what I can't wait more than anything is for you to tell me what your most anticipated books are. Is there anything you're excited about that I did not list here? Come mention it in the comments. Do you want to chat about this in more detail? Do you want to have some back and forth? Click on the link below and let's talk in my Discord channel. I would love to chat with you about all things fantasy, and As always, thank you so much for watching and happy reading to you. Thanks again to my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier patrons, Sky, Russell, Ron Reich, Romeo Mike, and CJ.